50 degrees Celsius. That is not an oven setting. That is a temperature more than one country in the Muslim world pushed past in the summer of 2024. The hottest summer the Arab world has ever recorded. But that is not the most terrifying part. Scientists have a number they call the survivability limit, the point where the body can no longer cool itself, where a healthy adult in the shade with water and rest has only hours before the heat kills them. For almost all of recorded history, no place on Earth ever crossed it. Now, the hottest nations on the planet are walking straight toward that line, betting their future on machines to hold it off. This is the story of the Middle East, North Africa, and the arc of hot countries stretching through Pakistan to Indonesia, and the realization that the threat they should fear most is not an army, a rival power, or a market crash. It is the air itself. For 50 years, the richest desert nations on Earth bet that money could beat the climate. They built glass towers out of the sand, air-conditioned entire cities from the malls to the bus stops, poured billions into desalination, then grew lawns and golf courses in the desert. They built indoor ski slopes while the air outside could kill an unprotected person within a day. For a while it worked, and the bet looked genius. But the desert is patient, and the data now says it is beginning to win, and almost none of what follows is a forecast. These are summers that already happened, summers people already died in by the thousand. Go back to June of 2024 to the Hajj pilgrimage in Mecca, where the Grand Mosque hit 51.8 degrees Celsius. Over 6 days, at least 1,300 pilgrims died, and roughly 83% of the dead were unregistered pilgrims, locked out of the air-conditioned tents and cooling stations. The heat did not kill at random. It killed those who could not afford to be shielded from it. That is this crisis in miniature. The machines protect whoever can reach them. The heat takes everyone else. That same month, a separate heat wave killed more than 568 people in southern Pakistan within weeks, most around Karachi, where temperatures passed 47 degrees and some morgues ran out of room. The next year, the heat came early and stayed. From April through July of 2025, a dome of high pressure sat over the Indian subcontinent like a lid on a pot. Rajasthan hit 48 degrees in mid-June, and hundreds died across India and Pakistan before the monsoon broke the spell. And notice the hidden key here. That heat wave baked Hindu-majority Rajasthan and Muslim-majority Sindh under the same ridge at the same moment. The heat hunts a place, not a faith. What drives this is geography, not belief. The trend is stark. 2024 was the hottest year ever recorded, the first full year past 1.5 degrees of warming above pre-industrial levels, and 11 of the last 11 years are the 11 warmest ever measured. The line on the graph is not wobbling, it is climbing. So how hot is too hot? In 2016, Maitriba in northern Kuwait registered 53.9 degrees, the highest temperature ever reliably recorded in Asia. The next day, Basra in Iraq nearly matched it, and a year later, Turbat in Pakistan hit 53.7. 3 of the 4 hottest temperatures ever verified on Earth were recorded inside this one belt within a single 12-month window. This is the hottest inhabited region on the planet, and it is heating faster than almost anywhere else. To grasp the danger, you need the wet bulb temperature, a reading that folds heat and humidity together. Sweat cools you only if it can evaporate, and an air that is both very hot and very humid, it cannot. Your core temperature simply climbs. A wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees is the absolute limit of human survival. Past it, a fit person resting in the shade with all the water they can drink dies in about 6 hours from their own trapped body heat. For most of history, that line was purely theoretical, since the wet bulb almost never rose above 31 degrees anywhere. Then in 2015, 2 MIT scientists modeled the Persian Gulf and found that late this century, under high emissions, cities like Doha, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Bandar Abbas could begin crossing that threshold. That very summer, a station in Iran recorded a wet bulb reading of 34.6 degrees, a hair below the limit. Extreme humid heat has more than doubled in frequency in recent decades, and by century's end, the most exposed parts of the region could face close to a third of the year as extreme heat days. The same research ranked the most exposed regions on Earth. First, the Persian Gulf, then northern India, then eastern China. 3 cultures, 3 religions, 1 fate, because all 3 sit inside the same furnace of latitude and humidity. The heat does not read a census, it reads a thermometer. And this force has broken civilizations before. 4,000 years ago, the Akkadian Empire ruled Mesopotamia until the rains failed for generations. The fields dried to dust, tax collection collapsed, and the cities emptied. Centuries later, the classic Maya hit their own wall of drought. Their reservoirs evaporated, and by around the year 810, their carved monuments simply stopped. Neither fell to an army. They fell to the sky. Heat dries the land stops feeding the people, and institutions crumble. What is different now is the scale. The Akkadians numbered in the hundreds of thousands. This region holds over 1 billion. Because the deadliest thing about rising heat is not what you feel on your skin. It is what heat does to water. 15 of the 20 most water-scarce countries on Earth sit inside this belt, which is warming at twice the global average. Heat attacks a dry region from 2 directions, pulling moisture from reservoirs and soil, while people, farms, and power plants demand more water to survive. Supply shrinks as demand explodes, a vice, tightening every summer. The Gulf states thought desalination had solved this, but those plants already swallow about a quarter of summer electricity in several states. To make water, they burn fuel, and burning fuel drives the warming that demands more water and cooling, a machine that feeds the problem it is meant to solve. And many of these nations depend on one river with no backup. When your survival flows down one river, the country upstream holds a knife. Egypt and Ethiopia are locked in tension over a giant Nile dam, while Iraq and Syria watch Turkey dam the Tigris and Euphrates. Water has become a weapon, and the next wars here may be fought over who gets to drink. If the water runs out, what happens to the food? Look at Egypt. More than 100 million people packed into the green ribbon of the Nile Valley, drawing 97% of their fresh water from one river, now the world's largest wheat importer, because it grows only half of what its people eat. A nation that cannot feed itself, sliding toward absolute water scarcity. The same arithmetic squeezes Pakistan, where the Indus shrivels and recent heat scorched the breadbaskets of Punjab and Sindh, leaving over 250 million people caught between heat and thirst. In Indonesia, the threat wears a mask of fire as drought dries the peatlands until they burn, with one recent fire season costing around $16 billion and unleashing haze linked to roughly 100,000 premature deaths. Same enemy, different disguise. If this is teaching you something new, hit subscribe to Fall of Nations, because what comes next is the part almost nobody sees coming. Not the heat, not the hunger, but what comes after them. A locked-in heat dome rewrites daily life. Outdoor work shuts down, so wages stop. Schools close. Hospitals fill with the elderly, and the poor livestock collapse. Roads soften, rails warp. Power demand spikes just as the grid is most likely to fail, so the cooling cuts out when people need it most. A city can endure days of this. After weeks, it breaks, and there is a quieter killer, the night. Concrete soaks up heat by day and radiates it after dark, so nights are warming even faster than days, and when the night never cools below the mid-30s Celsius, the body never recovers. That is how a heat wave turns lethal. So name the danger zone as a map. Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, the wet bulb front line, where heat and ocean humidity collide, and the nations betting hardest on engineering. Vision 2030 and the Gulf building boom are trillion-dollar wagers that a livable future can rise at the edge of human tolerance, built largely by outdoor laborers who already lose chunks of the working day to unsafe heat. And here is the bitter irony. The wealth behind these air-conditioned civilizations came from oil and gas, the very fuels heating their own backyard past habitability. They are the arsonists, and the first house to catch fire, trapped by a product their economies cannot quit. Move north to Iraq, where Basra and Baghdad bake above 50 degrees, and the grid buckles under everyone cooling at once, blacking out in the exact hours when losing power can be fatal. Some governments now admit the limits out loud, legally banning outdoor work during the hottest midday hours. That is adaptation, but also a confession, and each year that forbidden window grows wider. Go west to Egypt, east to Pakistan, down to Indonesia, and the danger zone forms one continuous belt across the hottest, most crowded latitudes on Earth. And here is the question governments fear more than any invasion. When a place becomes harder to live in, what do people do? They leave. The Akkadians did. The Maya did. Heat stress is projected to erase the equivalent of 80 million full-time jobs worldwide by 2030, with South Asia hit hardest. Picture one family. The well runs dry, two harvests scorch in a row, the river is dammed in another country, and a farmer cannot work outside without risking his life. So he leaves the land his family held for generations and heads for the city. And when the city has nothing, he looks further. Multiply that family by tens of millions, and a personal tragedy becomes a continental event. The first wave is internal, farmers pouring into overcrowded cities like Karachi, Cairo, Baghdad, and Lahore, where concrete traps heat and services crack. The second wave crosses borders, and a regional heat crisis becomes a global political one. The migration pressures reshaping European elections begin far upstream in a field that stopped producing, a town that ran dry, a summer too hot to work through. Under the politics of migration lies the politics of climate. That is why this crisis is so easy to underestimate. We picture a nation failing as sudden and cinematic, a coup, an invasion, a collapsing currency. But heat takes a country apart 1 degree at a time. A reservoir a little lower, a harvest a little thinner, a grid failing a little longer, a few thousand more families leaving the land. Each step is survivable alone, easy to patch for one more season, and that is exactly what makes it lethal. By the time the damage is impossible to ignore, the foundations are already hollowed out. That is the real meaning of the bet. You can air condition a shopping mall, but you cannot air condition a wheat field, a river, or a country of 100 million people. The machines protecting the glittering cities have never protected the land that feeds them, and the land is where collapse begins. The cruelest part is the timing. The damage peaks quietly. Years later, when the migration has scattered, the farmland is gone, and the institutions have lost their tax base, and the country still cannot understand why it no longer holds together. The Middle East spent decades and trillions bracing for threats it could see. Armies, rivals, crashes. But the threat that matters most has no flag and no face. It comes from the sky, and it does not negotiate. You cannot sanction it, deter it, or sign a treaty with the temperature. You can only adapt or be reshaped. For 50 years, the richest desert nations on Earth bet that money could beat nature. Nature is collecting. So what do you think? Can engineering and oil money hold the line against raw physics? Or are we watching the opening act of the largest human displacement of the century? Tell us in the comments. We read all of them. And if you want to keep following the forces quietly redrawing the map of the world, subscribe to Fall of Nations, because this story is only getting hotter.